Hello, and welcome to Stiles Manufacturing Solutions online event. My name is Gary Wernlund, Sales Manager for Office Furniture Manufacturing. I've worked over 30 years with Stiles, and it's my pleasure to host this virtual seminar. Over the next 3 days, we'll address some of the biggest challenges we face as an industry within three major areas of focus: production, people, and business strategy. Along the way, you'll hear from real manufacturers. They're industry leaders from various market segments from Georgia to California. And each of these manufacturers is likely experiencing some of the same challenges you're facing today. The event is live and we want to hear from you. So stay alert for interactive polling features included throughout the series, where your feedback will help shape our conversations. And join us at the end of each presentation for a live question and answer period. Today, we'll think production. We'll explore new trends in material handling, automation, and their effects on factory efficiency. Additionally, over the next 3 days, I'll be joined by some experts from Stiles Machinery. Today, I'm happy to welcome John Ridgway, Technical Manager based in North Carolina. John, welcome to Grand Rapids.
Thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Recently, you had a chance to visit a few manufacturers in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Can you tell us briefly about those visits?
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. First of all, we saw 3 customers, and to get variety, we figured we'd do different sizes of customers, so kind of small, medium, large approach. But they were wonderful hosts, and you'll see from the content, it was a great visit for all.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear, and in our polls, I think it'll be interesting to hear some tidbits about where we are as an industry as well.
Indeed.
So today's program is all about production. The first thing on our minds is the flow of production, factory layout. John, can you define what you would call efficient factory layout?
Yeah, Gary, so I would say in really general terms, an efficient layout of the factory will drive your productivity forward, and also reduces potential to damage the parts in process. That's the key right there.
Yeah, and a great place to start. So now that we've set the stage a bit, why don't we hear from some of those manufacturers and what they have to say?
Factory layout is a critical part of our planning. We have a magnetic board that we have the factory laid out on, that we have all the machines on magnets so that we can move them around. The first year that we ever rearranged all the equipment, it cost a fair amount of money, but the impact was huge. Throughput went up almost 40% overnight. And by seeing that, now we're on, I think, our 4th evolution of rearranging the factory, because we want to always think about the flow and getting the machines closer. Also adding conveyors, return conveyors, things that help the operator to stay at home. That's a big key for us too. We don't want the operator to have to move. We want the operator to be able to stay where they need to be staying, to feed the machine, to keep parts rolling.
Originally, we did what a lot of small companies do. We had everything on carts that rolled around. You had holes in the floor, and the carts would get hung up in those holes. We graduated from that and went to roller track. Our facility is covered with roller track, and it helps us move parts from point A to point B, and those points typically are from machine to machine or machine to assembly. What we have found is that we have greater response times and a lot less damage to our parts as we move them across the facility. And we're also able to keep things together, grouped together, so you don't have half the stuff on one table and another half of it on another table. We can keep it all together.
So we're constantly rearranging our production facility every time we get a new piece of equipment, every time our product mix changes. We're not just plopping it down where there's an empty space. We're looking at how does this fit in the big picture, and how can we save steps if we move this machine even though it has nothing to do with the new machine we're purchasing. That kind of thinking just leads to constant improvement in layout and efficiency and reducing steps between departments, which directly is time. From that, as we put that puzzle together, we were able to build a program here to train our employees. What is 5S? What is lean? Why should we do it? What does it mean? And once we did that, they just took it and run with it. 4 years later, everything you see out here is a result of our people just identifying problems in implementing solutions in their own work areas because they've been trained on what those processes mean.
Okay, that's good. And now we want to hear from you. You should see a poll question appear on your screen. Please answer this question. When was the last time you reconfigured your factory layout? The options are less than 1 year ago, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10, or has it been more than 10 years? So this will be interesting, John. We're kind of challenging them right out the gate. We know that factory layout and again, applying a good philosophy to it is not easy. Any thoughts you have as to what our respondents might say?
Yeah, Gary, this one's going to be very interesting because I think it's one of those things that people overlook a lot. So let's see where the results are for this one.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting too, because everyone has great intentions, I think, as it comes to their working on their factory layout,
Yeah.
but the day-to-day kind of overtakes the time to step back and take a look. And the investment portion of it too. I mean, it takes time for people to take away from their normal manufacturing days and involve their manufacturing people to come to a group effort on this topic. So this will be interesting. So here we go. Here's the results as they came to us. When was the last time you reconfigured your factory layout? The highest response, 1 to 5 years. Next response, less than 1 year. So John, that's really outstanding. I would say 79% of our people who are tuned in today have reconfigured their layout in the last period of time.
Yeah, that is eye-opening, right? Because that shows we have a lot of progressive customers out there that realize that plant flow and efficiently is very key to their process. So kudos to the customers out there that are doing that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and we appreciate your feedback. Those are the type of things, like John and I said, that'll help know how deep we can drill and should drill into some of these topics. So John, let's transition into some of the things that we heard in the videos. One of the things one of the people talked about was they called it continuous improvement as they related to their factory layout and such. So why do you think they have lots of room for improvement, or what mistakes might they be trying to overcome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a deep question too, because obviously from those customers' perspective, they see their business on a finite scale and it's always changing. Business is dynamic. So it's important that you have a dynamic scale to your actually factory layout as well, and not be stagnant with that. And our poll results show that that's the case.
Yeah, common mistakes too. We were talking about things like the placement of machines, even spacing of machines. John, talk about that a second, if you would.
Yeah, Gary, that's also a good point, because a lot of times we get situations where customers come to us and they ask us about layout, and we advise them to don't put the machines too close, don't put them too far apart, but also don't just fill a space on the floor. Before you do a factory layout, make sure you really do brainstorm in that a little bit, get some feedback from customers or customers, your colleagues within the facility, get the feedback. And one of the videos you saw was actually really cool. It was Marty, and he had a magnetic board in his room, and he was actually moving those machines around, made magnet representations of the machines. He would work on a layout, go home at night, come back, grab a coffee, look at it again, and massage that layout until he got it where he wanted, and also got a lot of buy-in from the folks on the factory floor.
And John, one thing as I want to touch on too is the amount of, as our industry talks about, work in process. You know, in our kind of our lean manufacturing training, a lot of us took the pendulum and we swung it over and said, we don't want to have any work in process. The challenge with that is that processes have different outputs, different capacities, and things happen on the production floor, right? So how do they determine what's the right amount of material to have in between machine processes and so on? Just a thought that came from me.
Yep, for sure.
So the other thing, when we talk about layout, when we talk about input from the people who are part of the team, part of it is the processes that are going on and the flow of materials from one process to another. And often our customers are getting more diverse processes or more complex processes because the customers are asking for more complex products more quickly, and it's that whole dynamic of things are getting more challenging in terms of keeping track of the flow. So is there anything, John, that can be done to help the people on the floor understand the flow more clearly?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because obviously making sure the product is in the right place at the right time is going to affect your efficiency. So you're going to look at simple things. It could be a route sheet that follows the parts around. It could be cones that are on the stacks of parts that identify where they are. It could be labels on the parts, which have great information on them as well. There's multiple things, even software nowadays, so you can scan a barcode and have stations along that production process which identify where those parts are. It's all about making sure that when the parts get to your kitting area, you have everything you need for your builder to build that box or flat pack it and send it out on its way.
John, what I liked about what you said too is it sounds like there isn't one size that fits all. John talked about the cones, for example, the orange safety cones that might identify a hot load in the process, or there may be a screen, for example, just a flat screen monitor that when an operator scans a barcode, it provides them certain information and those kind of things. So I like that hybrid concept, or picking up ideas from various ways. And in fact, that the other thing, John, was the topic of labeling too. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when we talk about automation of data, we refer to barcoding, but it's much more information that can go on the label and should go on the label than just the barcode.
Yeah, often, Gary, it really depends on the size of the label, the orientation of the label, the placement of the label on the part, how much data you can get on there. Also, because we're visual people, humans are visual people, color coding system on the labels makes a big difference too, because if you have a transfer spline in your facility, a roller conveyor, you can color coordinate your labels and make sure they go down the right spine based on a visual approach as well.
Yeah, and I saw a simple example too. You don't have to buy a color printer, for example. Mm-hmm. You can buy pre-printed labels, just ink out the colors that you don't want, you expose the color that you do want, and some of those simple practical things have worked really, really well.
Indeed.
So speaking of simple and practical, one of the things I liked about the video clips is I saw some examples of 5S being executed. The people who know lean know about straightening and just organizing things in a well done way. And I noticed a couple of things. John, what did you notice?
Yeah, in Austin's video, see, one thing that really jumped out to me when they were showing a video of the building station, you saw the white pegboard behind that shot. And also, they take it to the next level. And really, it was employee driven. What they did is they identified the need to know where the tools are at all times, lean, right? But they actually drew the outline of the tool on that pegboard. They even identified the handle of that tool with a specific color that corresponds to that builder. So at a glance, they can tell where that tool is and if the tool is missing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about things that I've learned about flow and layout and such too. And I mean, the goal, for example, is to try to keep things moving in a straight flow, because every time you make a turn, it costs money and it takes space. Yeah. So this idea of trying to work as much as possible in a straight flow, and those ideas are not they're not revolutionary, but sometimes they're not easy to execute. So let's go on to the next point of discussion, which relates to acquiring equipment now that would be used on your factory floor. Let's hear from these folks about how some make their investment decisions.
So when we're deciding on whether or not we're going to add a machine or a piece of equipment to the plant floor, and that could be a large machine, it could be something small, something that's not nearly as large. We have one thing that we look at first and foremost, and that's how long is it going to take us to pay it off. We look for a payoff in 18 months. That's our number. We have a number, and if we can do the calculations and show that we can pay the machine off in 18 months, we'll make the decision at that point to purchase the machine. That's really it. I mean, once we see a piece of technology and we see that we can invest in that technology and it's going to help us produce at a higher efficiency, then that's kind of the deciding factor between that and the payoff.
So when we're considering making machining investments, we look at this a couple different ways. Sometimes we may need a piece of equipment because we're getting into a new product that you just have to justify, do we have the sales dollars to need this piece of equipment? Sometimes we need a new piece of equipment because it's going to save us labor. An example of where we've done that is our interior doors. They used to be prepped by hand, real manual process. We added a new router and looked at the time it was going to save to shift what was an hour process to about 5 minutes on the router. We're constantly doing time studies when we do that to look at it, look back and say, okay, did this make sense or not? And then evaluating it based on that.
Sometimes it is looking where we want to be in the future, right? The more we've embraced finishing, the better we've gotten at finishing, the more our customers demand that we finish. So now we're looking for finishing solutions that take us to the next level, because that also is an ROI, because I'm getting new business, I'm getting higher profit margins, and so a lot of times it's customer driven on what we're doing.
As you heard, many factors can influence the investment decisions. We want you to tell us which variable is most important to you. So the next poll question is, what variable has the largest impact on your ROI calculation? Is it labor savings, increased production capacity, quality improvements, or new and future business? John, I think this one can bring a variety of responses too. We noticed in the pre-registration, we have the industry well represented, from the kitchen cabinet industry, the closet industry, the furniture industry, the millwork industry, which is a great segment of the whole woodworking business. Any insights you have in where you think this one might go?
Yeah, Gary, I'm looking to see if folks actually that are weighted more towards quality improvements too, because obviously with the quality improvements too, productivity and efficiency are all tied together. So I'm interested to see where quality falls in this.
And labor is a big topic. I mean, in the next couple of days, in fact, tomorrow, Thomas Allat and I from Stiles University talk about labor, and we hear some great stories from customers about the dynamics of the labor market and the labor situation now. So I think labor also has to be a significant topic, but we'll see.
Indeed.
So we're just populating the results. Increased production capacity, nearly 50%. Okay, growth in their business. That's a good sign. Labor savings, though, clearly the number two answer, with about 28% of our respondents, and then split between quality and new business. So interesting, John. So when you hear that increased production capacity, what does that mean to you if you picture most of our customers?
Yeah, most of our customers, I'd say, from that are very busy and they're struggling to get the product out the door. So that's where they're looking to get those increased efficiencies from, and obviously more production comes from that.
Yeah, I think there are surges in the business that are really challenging for people to handle too, and there are opportunities, for example, in the wood industry and in our marketplace right now, and people need to capitalize quickly, obviously. So how can we get more production more quickly? So,
for sure.
Yeah, interesting. So one of the things that I thought was interesting from the videos also was the different perspectives that we heard on return on investment. Can you, John, share what you heard?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting from our perspective too, because on the larger company, that was Eric's portion, they had a very defined ROI, and they had a time period of 18 months that they applied. It's a blanket statement, said benchmark for ROIs. Whereas the other customers, they kind of had their ROI based on the need for the investment. Did that potential sales product, new product, justify the investment?
Yeah, I think oftentimes in the past, when companies made equipment investments, they got together with their accounting people, for example, and there were some pretty simple accounting calculations that were made. The challenge, I read a great article some years ago, and it really holds true today too, is the difficult thing for companies when they're trying to do ROIs and trying to invest, for example, in new levels of automation too, is how do you put a value on the intangibles, or maybe I'd call it unmeasurables. I'm not sure that's a word, but it's those factors that you know have some cost or some value, but you can't put a specific number to it. You still have to put a number to it, yes, right? Or you'll never invest in go forward in further automation. Mm-hmm. The other thing on the quality side too, John, what strikes you as opportunities for return on investment through quality improvements? What comes to mind?
And one of the things too, on the quality side, it also too is you focus on slowing down the process, handling those parts less frequently, right? So you don't damage them. That's really important. That whole efficiency of that process.
Yeah. And the business gained also too. That was a little bit down toward the bottom, but I think about business gain in terms of capacity also. And oftentimes customers have a demand from the market that says they want this product if you can produce it and deliver it in this time frame. So the question is, can you get that business under those delivery? Can you be competitive, and can you get that business under those delivery conditions? So John, what could affect their time, I guess?
Yeah, so in COVID times, also an example, a lot of customers felt that some drop off in the overall business from the company. So as COVID came along, it provided opportunities for additional work. So sneeze guards, for example, out of acrylic material. It was able to fill those gaps in the production schedule and often developed a new realm, a new route for the customer to even have more greater investment.
Yeah, interesting. Challenging times, but opportunities for sure. And
for sure.
I think that the thing that I flip back to just for a second when we talked about layout and flow and those things too is the dynamics on the production floor too, or the dynamics within the company are more intense than they've been in the past.
Yes.
I mean, with the variety that customers want, the speed that they wanted at, and the opportunity that it drives some complexity and some pressure to the production floor. Well, we've talked about layout, we've talked about how to make investments. The next question is, but what is it that we should invest in? Our industry is really moving rapidly toward various forms of automation. Here are some manufacturers, how are some manufacturers already embracing it? Let's take a look.
When it comes to automation, we've done a really good job focusing on every little area, and it's not always equipment. Like you say, the transfer spine you've seen in our shop is a good example of that. It used to take a forklift walking around. Now you could just start and move parts by hand. Every process we looked at how we can automate it. Do we shift it to a router? Do we use conveyors? Do we use the return system we have out there? But we've examined every process we can and say, what can we automate to take a less skilled person and be able to do more output.
And now it's so hard to find employees that automation is critical. It's critical to meet the lead times that we're faced with from the customer, high expectations, short lead times. Frankly, you can't do it without the automation. And we're always looking to how we can cut steps out of the process. And when I say steps, I mean physical stepping of a human being. And so automatic infeeder on a router, automatic outfeed on a router. Before, a guy stopped in production to unload the router, to reload a new sheet. Well, I almost doubled my efficiency on the router because now while he's unloading, the next sheet's already running.
So we have indeed embraced automation. We haven't embraced it as much as we want to even. I mean, it's an exciting piece of this industry. We have purchased a storage retrieval system, and I don't even know where we would be today without it. It has really helped us increase our productivity. But not just that, of course, we do have 3 edge banders, and all 3 of those edge banders have return conveyors. Each return conveyor replaces a person. The storage retrieval system could replace probably 3 to 5 people easily. Now, these aren't positions that would be eliminated necessarily. These are just positions that we're able to move those people onto other pieces of equipment or maintenance the piece of equipment that we've added.
Yeah, those are some really interesting responses to me. And what struck me too is when they talked about automation, there were a variety of different examples that they used. What examples, what did you hear?
So we saw obviously large examples with a storage and retrieval system. We saw return conveyors on edge banders being described as well. There was roller conveyor mentioned multiple times in all the facilities. But one thing to really take away from that, because it is automation, is software.
Yeah, and we'll dive more into that. But I thought too what they talked about in terms of some simple devices to keep people at home, right? To keep operators at home. I thought that was a great example on the edge banding machine, because they were not only talking about how do we reduce the amount of labor in that process, but how do we make the process more efficient by just keeping the operator, again, it's kind of like back to one of the 5S principles, keep things handy so you don't have wasted movement reaching for things or those things. So we've been keeping an operator, whether an edge bander or whichever type of machine, keeping them in the right spot. But the data piece, John, if I think about that one as an example, for example, the data that is required for an edge bander operator today is more complex and more diverse than in the past. So I guess what are some of those other benefits of when we talk about data automation?
So data is going to drive the business forward. That's how it is, especially nowadays with so many of the machining solutions being CNC driven, all driven by touchscreen devices too. Having that useful data really does make those machines really efficient.
Yeah. And we like to talk about moving personnel to new positions within the company, not eliminating personnel, but moving them to higher value added type jobs. So what other jobs, John, might people be moved to if in the past they were a material handler, so to speak?
Yeah, so you're going to look at a situation where you've got a trusted employee that you don't want to lose, and we don't want to obviously lose people. We want to reallocate them to different parts of the facility to deal with peaks and valleys in that production stream. Austin, I believe it was, during our actual interviews on site, mentioned that he was able to take a key individual, release some work off him, and he became the quality improvement individual on site.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
And I think this ties directly into one of the topics for tomorrow too, is how do we attract workers, for example, to this industry? I don't think most of the people who are unemployed today are interested necessarily in just feeding parts into a machine. The hard physical labor that's been a big part of our industry for a long time. There's ways to reduce that or even eliminate that kind of labor, but the more of a knowledge worker on the factory floor is, I think, interesting for the labor pool, but also it's what we need. And what's an example of what a new knowledge worker might be on the floor?
Yeah, in most cases, you want someone that's going to have a basic aptitude to know where a part needs to be put on the machine, take care of the machine itself, obviously make sure that it's running and keeping running too. You don't need to have someone with a great deal of knowledge of the machine. The machines are so user-friendly now to run.
Right.
Yeah.
In the industry that I work in, office furniture, we run multiple shifts most times, have short delivery times, and being complete and on time is really critical to satisfying the customers. So we talk about reliability plus recoverability equals really how productive we are, because the challenge is, even if you have really high quality machine that's a reliable machine, things go wrong, and it could be something as simple as the data isn't there. You scan a barcode and for some reason the program isn't there, or the data isn't right. And John, so I think what you said early on about organizations and emphasizing their knowledge of data, and the other piece I think that's significant too when we talk about recoverability is not every company has a maintenance person or a maintenance staff, but you need someone who can use the diagnostics that are available on the screen or diagnostics that are available through support to get running again quickly. And time is really of the essence. And then on day 3 of this event, David Maurer from our systems engineering group and I are going to talk about this whole idea of automation at even a higher level, or if you want to say a deeper drill. But we're going to talk about even connecting more machines or more processes together, and the challenges of doing that. So John, on that same topic, let's for a second let's talk about if a company is going to consider going to even a higher level of automation, connecting more machines together, doing more handling automatically. What would they need, like in core competencies? What would be important that they have in place?
Yeah, that's a really good question too, because one thing you want to start out with too, and we've spoken about it through this session so far, is the data. The business data is really important. How much product are they putting through the plant? Where is the growth expectation? Do they have an ERP system, right? What type of software system do they want to drive that machine with? But also we need to look at how their maintenance personnel is structured. Are the maintenance personnel structured to where they can deal with a lights out type scenario?
Sure. And what's really exciting, I think, about automation right now too is it's becoming more reliable because it's been available for a longer period of time. I mean, the storage and retrieval systems for many, many years. So mechanical reliability isn't the question. And even when machines are connected together in line too, there are still little buffers that are put in because someone will forget to change a coil of edge bang material, or there will be a time when the data isn't available. So some of these same concepts that affect our customers' factory floors today are the same situations that'll continue in the future. We just use automation in different ways to satisfy. Well, John and I could spend a long time, hours talking about automation. It's exciting stuff, and but we'd like you to join us on day 3, like I said, when David Maurer and I will talk in more detail about bringing automation to different levels of production as well. So to close today's conversation, we asked our guests a fun what if question. we all wish money was no object, right? So let's pretend in this case that it isn't. We asked them, if you had a blank check, what tool or technology would be your first purchase? Let's see.
If we had a blank check, I'd buy the top of the line store tech. That's the most innovative piece of technology, from material moving inside your inventory area to keeping machines running efficiently, and then also tracking inventory and what you have where and what you don't have. It's just the most innovative piece of technology to come out that I've seen.
If I had a blank check from an investor to spend, that's a difficult question. First, I would need floor space. But if I had a blank check and floor space, adding another finish line would probably be my first order of business because it is my bottleneck. An inventory retrieval system would be huge so that I can have the decision made in the office instead of on the shop floor. That the right material is getting picked, that the guy doesn't have the opportunity to pick the wrong material, that he's not spending his time riding around on forklift, but he's at the machine cutting. And then if there was a software solution to help drive all that and help us collect that data a little better, that too.
We have 4 or 5 machines that are aging on the plant floor, and we know that that would more than likely be our first area of investment. Anything that we can do when it comes to automation with replacing those pieces of equipment. I know that there's a panel saw that we're looking at that, you know, it's a robotic panel saw, and that's an area. Another area is an automated finishing line. But at the end of the day, it's all about automation and technology for us. So anything that we can do and invest in those areas, the paybacks are a lot quicker when you invest in the automation and just technology in general.
You heard their responses, but what do you say? If you were given a blank check, what tool or technology would be your first purchase? In this case, would it be a digital solution, an automation or material handling solution, machining solution, or facility expansion? John, this is a bit of a loaded question. I mean, it's designed to be fun, but it's a bit of a loaded question. If I was to ask you, John Ridgway, what would you do with the blank check? You'd say,
Well, Gary, I would say I would buy a British Racing Green Aston Martin DBS, and I'll take you for a ride in it. How about that?
That sounds great. It's great. It's great to dream, and I think for our people who are online and also among our customers, you know, it's good to be taking benchmarking opportunities to go out there and see what's world class, for example, and to dream a bit, because it's one of those things. I've been on benchmarking tours through the years, and dreams became realities. Okay, took some time, and ultimately people worked their way to that level of technology. So we've got the results back in regard to the blank check and what their first purchase would be. 47% in material handling, so automation as we've been calling it.
Right.
Fairly even split from there on out to a machining solution, to a factory expansion. The digital solution was the lowest at 13%. So any observations from that, John?
It's good to see that the folks are looking at automation again holistically. It's not just a big piece of equipment. It doesn't have to be a big piece of equipment. They can make these nugget size changes to their production flow and have a profound impact on their efficiency overall.
Yeah, and I think what they heard, I hope what they heard, is automation too comes in lots of different sizes and lots of different there's different applications.
Correct.
For example, we talk about things like return conveyors, but there are there's much variety in what can be done in terms of automation. Yeah, interesting. So John, one of the things if we put ourselves in our customers' shoes too, some of the challenge becomes how to gather the information that's needed to begin to create an ROI. So if you think about gathering information from their production? What might they be able to gather to support an investment in automation?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we get asked that a lot to help customers with that type of data retrieval. And one of the things we start out with is making sure that the customer knows their total cost per hourly goods, because that's really important, because that mated with the whole production process they're doing now and the time involved in making the products they're doing now and where they want to go allows them to figure out that data.
And when I talked earlier too about this unmeasurable or uncapturable data too, it's something, one of the items that's really critical, but not so easy to capture is the amount of time that machines are being starved or waiting for material.
Indeed.
So that's a fact that can be gathered on the floor. There are some machine functions that can do that, but many people have to take that into their own hands to gather that specific information.
But that's very important data.
Another thing that I was thinking about, it's not so exciting as thinking about new investments in automation, but it could be machine replacements, right?
Mm-hmm.
They talked about old machines and replacing old machines. So how do you go about knowing when the time is to replace and justify an older asset?
Man, that's a really good question too, because obviously I wouldn't look at it as far as when the equipment's paid off. You should always be looking at what is the newest, the latest, the greatest innovation, because newer machines are going to be faster, they're going to be more efficient, they're more productive. And that's going to keep you ahead of your competitors, because if you stand still and don't innovate in your facility, they will.
Yeah, I was thinking about things too, like not necessarily making the machines go faster, but having better and more productive time.
Yeah.
In other words, eliminating changeovers, for example. It could be things like eliminating downtime as well. Oftentimes, I've been in discussions where people have said the machine is paid for, it doesn't cost us anything, but that's not accurate. Because, for example, if quality, you talk about the cost of quality. John, what's an example, for example, where quality might be costing and might be a significant impact on replacing it with a new machine?
So when you get warranty returns from customers too because of warranty issues, that costs a lot of money.
Yeah. Cleanliness of panels, for example, coming off edge banding machine, and the amount of cleaning or handwork that has to be done is a significant thing with edge banding machines, especially older in nature. They didn't have all of the cleaning functions that they did, and today, for example, that can be a significant impact on ROI itself.
I agree.
So in the later discussions too, later in the week on Thursday, we'll dive into that a little bit more. But John, this did a really great job, I think, to lay the framework for people to start not only dreaming but gathering information so that you can support with data and with information the possibility. One of those. A small thing, and we almost missed this one too, but we were talking a couple of days ago, you and I were talking about adding capabilities too. So what might be a capability, and John, you're a specialist, especially in the CNC market, what might be a capability someone would add to a CNC machine to try to bring more business and a better ROI?
Yeah, and in one of the videos, Marty spoke about the fact that his newest machine had automation on it as far as automated handling or loading of materials and unloading the materials. And I believe he said in the video it increased his throughput on the machine by 40%.
Yeah,
that's staggering.
That's big.
Yeah,
that's big. And I was thinking about things like 5-axis type machining too.
Correct.
That used to be a Star Wars dream
yeah.
in the past days in early woodworking, for example. But 5-axis angled trimming or boring or such can open the door for new product development or new opportunities as well.
For sure.
Well, at this time, would like to invite you to share any questions that you might have relating to today's subject of thinking production. You can submit those questions in the tab on the right side of your webinar platform. We might not have time to answer all the questions, but we're excited to hear from you, so please contribute. So let's kind of recap the segments too. What we talked about in our 4 segments was we talked about factory layout, we talked about making investments, about automation, and about your dreams of having a blank check. So questions from any of those categories and any of the rest might be welcome. So, John, this is I think it's an interesting time too, because I wonder about these different groups in the industry that are represented here. We talked about kitchens, we talked about closets, about furniture, about millwork, and so on. So the questions could be quite varied, or they could be kind of grouped together. You have any insight or any thoughts on?
It's gonna be interesting to see what we get back. In fact, one just came in.
Okay, so here's the first question. Oh, good one right out the gate. What is the future of robotics in the wood industry? You go first.
Well, to me, the key is really the word future there, because the future is now. Robotics is here. It's much more affordable. It's easy to use. It's driving our industry forward. Again, you're going to learn more about the issues with hiring people, maintaining workforce later this week too. But robotics can really help with that. And where robotics before was mostly focused on a repetitive product, now the robots are much easier to program and they're much more flexible with what they can do on the machine. So the future for robots is now, and you should really look at robotic systems.
I was going to say robots are a classic example of me too of a mechanical technology that's proven. I mean, global industries have used it for long periods of time, so it's not a question about that. It's a question about applying them properly with the software and the end of arm tool and the application, right, to drive it to a good result. Another question. Okay, back to where we started today, John, about configuring the layout. Someone asked, how do I get started in reconfiguring my layout?
Yeah, so I guess what I would recommend, take the Marty approach with that. Put a board on the wall, start cutting pictures of the machines out there, move them around to just get an idea of where you want the flow to be. Obviously, keep in mind your work in process, what materials you want to introduce to the production flow, but get some creativity and get some feedback from the people on your floor as well, because they're going to be using the machines on a constant basis, and they're very, very valuable to get information from.
Yeah, and let me just interject, if you don't have a magnetic board, just do it with paper.
Indeed.
Do it with, make some models that are the right scale size of the paper, and do it with paper. But Marty's suggestion on magnets was really good. Another thing that I thought about too is it's really unfortunate now during the restricted travel that we have, we can't benchmark as much as we used to, or during the past years. I mean, we've gone to other facilities. There are tours, for example. We have had events, for example, because I think one of the greatest challenges too is you really don't know where you are in your business, and you really don't know what's possible until you get out and you compare it to something else. And that's the other thing. I think it's hard to get outside of our box if we don't get outside of our plants. So that's another thing. We're looking forward to more capability to move, but this is an example, an event where we're trying to promote that same thought.
Also, Gary, too, with Marty and Eric, they were actually on our benchmarking tours before, and they actually credited a lot of what they've done with their layout from what they've learned from those tours.
Okay, good. Oh, here's a loaded question, and we always get loaded questions. This one says, how much is a store tech? In other words, this materials management system that we talk about used to be called IntelliStore, now it's called store tech. How much is a store tech? We're not going to answer that question today, but let me put it this way. Let me put it back to our people and say, what does it cost you to not have a materials management system? So, John, what do you think of when you think of costs that they might be incurring if they don't have a materials management system?
Yeah, so when you think about a material management system, a storage and retrieval system, think about the square footage that the materials spread out over the facility right now. It may be in racks as well. Think about the forklifts that have to service those racks and just in time deliver that material to the machines themselves. Think about the maintenance of the forklift driver, and they can be repurposed. It just goes on and on. So to your point, you got to really look at the cost you're already paying for that.
Yeah, and if you're starving a machine, you're starving the rest of your downline process. You know, if you're not doing well at that front end part of the process, you're starving things downstream. And I think about things like material yield also too. You don't scrap or damage panels like you do when you handle them manually, and not with the same occurrence. And this whole idea too of how do you utilize the whole panel? Can you save half of the panel? Do you put it in a rack? That's one way to do it, or do you put it back in the system and let the system manage? So yeah, it's back to that customer or whoever asked that question. That I think counting the cost is what helps build your justification.
I would agree with that for sure.
Here's what I thought, John, this is an important one, I think, too. The solid wood part of the industry, too. We touched briefly on some solid wood examples, but what about some other automation examples in the solid wood segment?
Yeah, that's also a great question, because on a molder, for example, right? There's new types of molders now that have CNC setup. So you can grind knives in the tool room, send those profiles out to the machine. The machine has servos on, much like a CNC router does, and moves those heads into position. Just cuts down the changeover time of the molder greatly. Yeah. That's a good one example. Hopper fed system on a molder, hopper fed system on a chop saw. optimization on a scanning system, so where we're defecting as well. They're all examples of automation in solid wood.
Yeah, and I think data is the other thing too. I mean, in America, we have a great resource in solid wood,
yeah.
but it really comes down to how effectively do we optimize and use it? How much labor does it cost us, or do we add to that in order to manage the rest of the kind of the supply of solid wood components? But we have great opportunity both in data automation technology, material handling automation, and so on. And there's a tremendous activity too. If you think about the solid wood and the wood developments that are going on in our marketplace, you know, there was a 7-story tall building that they built completely from wood. You know, it's a great material, and even the environmental story and the green impact of wood has got this business, I think, in a great position to go forward. Well, thank you for joining us on day 1 of the Stiles Manufacturing Solutions online event. Today we were thinking production. My name's Gary Wernlund, and I'd like to thank John Ridgway. John, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It was great to have you here. I hope all of you can join us tomorrow for day 2, Thinking People. Do you have trouble finding quality or skilled employees? How do you retain your employees when you find them? And how do you train or cross-train your workforce? We'll answer these questions and more tomorrow. We hope to see you then. Take care.